Hi, everyone. Welcome to your next session. I'm super excited to be here today with Carrie Cox, the VP of Sales at Wint. Carrie, welcome.
Thanks so much, James.
Of course.
Yep, happy to be here.
Great.
All right. So let me share my screen. Okay. So again, thank you, James, for having us today. Really excited to just have a great conversation about a topic that could be, unfortunately, at top of mind for some of you today. So what we're going to be talking about is mitigating construction site water damage. And so we're going to put it in context in a few ways. We'll talk about, some of the insurance statistics and trends that we're seeing, both from our insurers as well as, what we're seeing on our side. We'll talk about, the hidden cost of water damage. So much of what we see hit the P&L is, are things like premiums and deductibles. And so I want to touch on some of those items that really may be hidden out of view. Then we'll talk about the building life cycle and really, how is it that today's contractors and owners, developers, how exactly do you implement some kind of water mitigation technology on your sites? And then the last piece we'll touch on shortly are some case studies around some wins and successes. So as James mentioned, I'm Carrie Cox. I'm the VP of Sales for WINT, which stands for Water Intelligence, and really excited to share with you some of our insights. So right out of the gate, one of the things that we're hearing is that water damage makes up a tremendous amount of the builder's risk insurance claims every year. So actually the number is around 63%. Now that varies, of course, from insurer to insurer. But one thing is the case is that overall, what we're hearing in the industry is that water damage is the new fire, or, so in other words, fire used to be a really important issue, and it still is, but water damage has really taken over that insurance community in regards to what's important to them. What are they most worried about from an underwriting perspective? So we want to touch on some trends that we're seeing in insurance. Before we do that, I want to touch on some voice of the customer. So some of these are from our insurance partners, some of these are from the industry, some are from contractors and owners. What we hear are a few things in regards to protecting the job site. It's, first of all, water damage can mean huge losses, as many of you know. A lot of people are saying, look, I need a solution now. The fact is that, of course, a really strong QA QC process is important, absolutely. But the fact is that there's so many other sources of water damage that it's really hard to mitigate all of them. And so you have to have multiple solutions to really meet that need. We hear that, hey, my premiums are rising, my deductibles are rising. We've certainly heard deductibles in the range of $250K and even recently $500K for more of a high risk wood frame project. We hear about protecting the job site during partial occupancy. So, as we are turning over, as you're turning over, whether it be apartment units or part of a hotel prior to completion, how is it that you protect those beautiful finishes now that you have them in the building? And of course, at that period of time, the risk of water damage is the highest towards the end of the project. And, as someone in the industry, I really, it pains me to hear the number of times that, somebody's stack of apartments with all of the finishes complete. Really pains me to hear that. So many times do we also hear, hey, I've gotten so many 4 a.m. phone calls, dread those phone calls, coming in on Monday morning to find I've got water damage. And of course, it happened over the weekend. The big item here, I would say, are two things we hear, which is give my team control, which means give my team control of water on the job site. And I need protection when the risk is the highest towards the end of the project. So it's not just protecting, the temp feed as construction is happening, but then how do I really protect the job site from small leaks that can turn into something really big? Now, because of these things, we are seeing some really interesting trends. So what I've heard is that, in the next 2 to 3 years, our insurers in general are really going to be requiring and or strongly recommending some kind of leak detection solution. And some that I talk to really believe that it's going to be more a requirement. And that can happen in the next 2 to 3 years. I hear that on the carrier as well as on the broker side. So today, more and more carriers are requiring some kind of leak detection, water mitigation system during construction. It can be a requirement in general, but also we're seeing that insurers are starting to give incentives for leveraging a system during construction. And I've seen that those incentives can come in a variety of different ways. That could look like a credit, whether it be on the premium or deductible side. Certainly depends on the level of risk in the project. But we've definitely seen strong interest around incentives. So definitely lots of movement there. The last item I would mention is, for many years, the industry, I think we've really utilized lots of different types of leak solutions. And what we've seen are by and large detection solutions where, you might have a sensor, or you might have a very basic system that could monitor water and perhaps send an alert, or a flow, no flow kind of alert. What our carriers are saying is, hey, you know what, detection is great, but we really want prevention. If we are going to insure you, if we are going to underwrite this project, we need to be sure we can protect the job site by turning the water off. Whether that means, turning off the water during after hours on the weekend when no one is there, or overnight, or whether that means more of an automatic water turnoff even during the day when you've got people on the job site. In general, though, this has been a very strong area of strong interest from the insurance community. And the water damage problem, it's not simple, as you all know. It's everything from building envelope deficiencies to water delivery, our traditional plumbing and mechanical systems. But it doesn't stop there. And it really depends on the builder's risk policy in regards to what's covered and what's not. But as I mentioned, any good QA/QC program will cover these items, but it's really hard to get your arms around all of the things that can happen on a live construction site, which is what I call a living, breathing organism. And so the items I put in blue on this slide, which are building envelope system deficiencies and water delivery failures, those are by far the top two items that we see and hear as being an overall issue. And by the way, that's from contractors and that's from insurers. And so specifically, we're going to touch on a little bit of the water delivery failures today, whether that's, your standard domestic, your potable water systems, to fire sprinkler, your cooling tower or chiller. So we'll cover those specifically in a little bit more detail. But probably I'm not the only one on this call that has experienced the pain of a fire sprinkler head being knocked off by a subcontractor. Somebody, we've got fittings that have, we've got faulty subcontracting work. So definitely we'll touch on that a bit more. And so, as we as we work with our clients around how do we mitigate water damage, we've really uncovered some more obvious and some less obvious, but it's what is the total cost of water damage to builders? And so what we did is we said, okay, these are all of our assumptions based on the really the feedback from contractors and developers. So what we did is we built a model to understand what that cost would actually look like. And we vetted that through multiple insurance carriers and some general contractors. And so what we came up with are, this is really high level, but what we came up with are these 9 basic things that make up the cost of water damage. Now, some, as I mentioned, are more obvious, which are literally the out-of-pocket expense of paying the deductible post a water event. And so the second item here is also pretty obvious, which is, hey, there could be some level of water damage that we actually don't put an insurance claim for. So that's just strictly out of pocket, and that comes right down to our bottom line. The third one down here is all the cost that is associated with actually managing those insurance claims. That's the salaries of those employees that functionally have to deal with all of the things that come along with putting a claim in. The fourth item is the cost of project delays, including lost revenue. I know that I experienced one recently. There was a project extension as a result of a water leak. And so that for them, it was lost revenue because their tenants could not move in. Happened to be a multifamily situation. So that was the real killer. The fifth one, would be an increased builder's risk cost for project extension. This one, it seems obvious, but one thing I did hear pretty loud from our insurance community is that, look, especially if we have water damage on a project, we see the need to not only extend that builder's risk policy because of the project delay, but now we're also going to be potentially increasing the builder's risk policy, potentially not even extending the policy at all. Perhaps the water damage was severe enough the insurer said, hey, I'm not going to insure the project. And then, of course, we also hear that just overall, they would then require the client to put some kind of leak detection system in place for the extension time. So there's a lot of increased cost there when you have those project delays as a result of water damage. The sixth thing is future project premium and deductible increases. This is probably where I've seen, it really depends on the vertical market and certainly how competitive the market is right now. But wow, we are really seeing some increased deductibles. As I mentioned, many for those wood frame projects, but I think the whole industry is really going to be hit here, especially given all of the recent incidences in Texas. And unfortunately, I hate to see that happened. And, it's probably going to hurt the industry to some extent because the insurers are paying out billions of dollars worth of claims because of many times frozen pipes burst, and now we have water damage. So that's going to hurt overall moving forward. Now, there are some other components that I would say don't necessarily show up on the bottom line as the first 6 do, but we certainly see it as, definitely let's call it a soft cost. Now, one thing that we hear loud and clear is that water damage it's a morale issue. If you've got a team on the ground and everybody's working well together, a water damage event can be an absolute rhythm killer. I'll never forget when a VP of operations telling me, he said, listen, Carrie, this is just, it just kills all the rhythm and momentum of the job. And that's 100% true. The seventh or the eighth item here is job site safety. Really, as all of us in construction know, safety is the #1 priority. So it certainly hurts us. It cannot help in the safety EHS part of what we do. And then the last part, which certainly could impact business, is overall reputation. If we continue to have water events, depending on if you're a contractor or developer, it could certainly be potentially a loss of business. So that's what we're really seeing happen in the market as it relates to the true cost of water damage. Now, the other thing when we think about it, when we think about water management and how is it that we really look at this problem holistically, one of the things to really look at is the building life cycle, and to not just look at an individual project for construction. So the way we really approach these projects, and in general the market, is really approaching it based on planning, designing, all the way around to optimizing. So, starting at the top, when we're involved, if you can get a company involved during planning and designing, that's the best case scenario, because then you're allowing your consulting engineers to plan and design and allow the contractor to give you support through that process, and to really plan for a system that's going to work well, like I mentioned, for construction and post-construction. The next part of that building life cycle is, of course, the actual construction phase. And that's where you really want to protect that job site, and alternatively also get lead points for innovation as well. That's available and out there. The third piece is operate. Now, many times I would say 50 to 70% of the work that we do is transitioned from construction to the operational building, the fixed property. And so now you have this peace of mind where, hey, I've got my job site protected, but now I'm going to protect the building, the occupants, and this beautiful finished property from day one. And we know that in the first year or two, some things can go wrong. And so we found that that's a really seamless transition. The last piece here is ongoing optimization. As we have owners, as we have tenants that are really interested in efficient water management and sustainability, this type of system really plays well into meeting those overall goals. So we really see it not as a linear process, but it's really circular and cyclical, because it's, as you are builders, owners, and developers, this is how we think about ongoing building design, water management to support the building short and long term. Okay, so just an overview of what AI can give to the job site. And every system's a little bit different, of course. And so just want to give you a quick snapshot of some of the things that you can do with these types of systems. So, typically the systems should be designed according to the plumbing plans of this individual building. That will give you the best protection. Out of the gate, of course, protecting that temp feed coming into the site is really critical. But then how do you optimize that? By including additional systems over time. Once you've got water on, permanent water on, then you've got finishes coming in, and more systems could be needed at that point. So it's really a balancing act between the most basic level of protection and something that's going to protect against that small leak on the 12th floor that starts as something small, grows, right? And then turns into a really large claim. So in general, what we would look to do is to identify those critical strategic areas of the construction site, provide our devices, which would deliver intelligent monitoring, give the team on the ground the capability to turn the water off automatically or at predefined periods of time. And then, of course, providing another level of protection with central monitoring in our customer support. KPIs are very important. Being able to control the system through mobile app is very important. So those are definitely all the things that I would look for in any kind of leak detection system. So here's just a few things as well to consider as you think about, hey, if I want to do some kind of water damage mitigation program and I maybe want to utilize a technology, what types of systems can I protect? And so here's just some examples of the types of systems that we see, either A, having some kind of issue, right? So whether it's the main and temp feed and those cold water risers all the way up to cooling tower and the HVAC, the chilled water. And fire sprinkler as well. So just a snapshot of, engineered drawings of the types of things that we at WINT provide. But certainly what I want to point out here is that there are, of course, lots of options as you deploy a solution onto your job site and the types of systems that you want to protect. And just a snapshot of artificial intelligence, sometimes it's hard to get the mind around, well, how the heck does this work during construction? We think about let's just call it a very basic solution that maybe senses water and sends an alert. Or perhaps if you just want to set a specific threshold and it reaches a certain volume of water, then the system sends an alert and the team can go investigate. So we definitely, here at WINT, we definitely take a dual approach. We do provide visibility into setting thresholds, setting specific times that you can shut the water off automatically. But then we do leverage artificial intelligence even during construction. So really high level, we combine machine learning, our preset algorithms together, and those provide analysis at the edge. When I say at the edge, every single device, every single system should have the ability to monitor that individual area separately. So for example, if you've got a cold water riser or a group of risers, that individual system should only be monitoring that area. Therefore, it should only have to or only be able to shut down water in that area. So what you'll see here on the right are just some examples of some specific water patterns that a system sees in order to make those decisions. All right, so just a couple quick snapshots of some case studies that you may find interesting. The first one would be with a very large general contractor. This particular contractor had water damage probably on every single job site, came to us and said, listen, I've got multifamily projects, standard commercial projects, I've got it, I need help. So what we did is say, let's put together a structured process for maximum protection throughout the project. And every project is a little bit different. So what we did is we deployed units from day one. And now we actually deploy, we plan and design, and we have been deployed at over 40 sites over the course of 3 years. And so our solution is mandated now on all of those sites. For them, they found that they've not had any major water incidences since we've been deployed. But the other thing we talked about before is how do we get clients favorable insurance rates? Not just from, hey, I've had one successful project around water damage. I haven't had any, but how can I get long-term performance? How do I get the kind of performance that would earn me favorable insurance rates? And so side benefit to this particular client was the overall reduction of water. Now we're hearing more and more contractors, it's not a new thing. More are very interested in sustainability overall. And so this solution gives visibility to not just, leak detection, but also overall consumption and when water is consumed and how. One other thing I'd like to point out is just a basic use case that we see very often, and this would go back to burst pipes. It's a very common burst pipe scenario. Now, what you see on the screen, we talked about artificial intelligence before, but what you'll see is a visual representation of what the system sees in order to alert and then take a decision like closing a valve. Now, what you see here is simply water consumption, water patterns, very normal. This is a construction site. So water pattern and water usage, of course, varies from day to day, but this is normal. Now, system, there was a burst pipe on this job site. The system sent the alert. Now, one of the things that you can elect to use is an alert-only policy during work hours where you have subs all over the job site. You may not want the system to automatically close the valve during that time. Great. So this is a client-elected alert-only policy. And as you can see here, unfortunately, most folks hate this graph because you can actually see water coming into the building right here. Now, I want to point out that this is a great reason as to why we now have our situation room or central monitoring. This is an important point about central monitoring in general. Who is there to watch over the system when the system alerts, but maybe you've got somebody sleeping or you've got somebody that missed the text message, the alert. And so now this team would actually escalate via a call list to say, hey, system alerted, we still see water, we think you should check it out. So in this scenario, the flow increased. Now at 5 o'clock, this is another important point. How do you turn water off at night? How do we ensure that when the last person who leaves, because usually there's a policy in place or a written procedure in place to say, hey, listen, we're going to turn the water off every single night. But what happens if that doesn't happen? What happens if we have human failure? So what this did is actually the after hours policy kicks in that said, close the valve every evening at 5 p.m. So that's what that did. Job site, as you can see, did have some water damage. Fortunately, they mitigated a ton more damage and saved themselves massive damage. So hope you got a little bit out of this. We certainly would love to chat with you more about your water mitigation plans, talk to you a little bit about what we do, what we can do for you. You can see here on the screen some of our customers and partners, and we'd love to hear from you. Would love to discuss how we can help best meet your needs in mitigating water damage. Thanks so much, James.
Thank you, Carrie. That was great. I know everyone's giving you a huge round of applause right now. We can't hear them, but it's roaring. Thank you to everyone for tuning in for this session. Feel free to make your way to your next one. Don't forget, there's a ton of networking opportunities. Check out a booth, take that meeting you've been eyeing, and we will see you at your next session. Thanks, Carrie. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thanks so much. Bye.